Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith, and welcome back to the Disney debate, where Kat Mac and I talk about Disney products and Disney in general. So how's it going, Kat?
Going good, although I am kind of scratching my head at the moment. But
Scratching your head.
yes,
What for?
well, partially because I have an itchy scalp, and also partially because I just watched this movie that a lot of people consider Disney's most controversial film, and yet I don't exactly see what's so bad about it.
I actually think there are plenty more controversial films in Disney libraries rather than this film. But before we even really talk about this film, we really have to say that this is all our opinion. You know, I do not support racism at all. Very anti-racism. I believe in equality. I believe in everyone should, be allowed to live an equal life.
Except for the Dutch. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. My opinions are the same. I believe in equality for all, regardless of race, gender, religion, all that stuff. So
You
this
should
pretty
be
much
able to live your life the way you want to live it.
exactly. So we just wanted to get that out of the way before starting this review, in case any of you think that we were implying anything.
Yeah, we want to let you know that, this is a very controversial film, and regardless of our opinion on what the film is stating, we do not support racism in any of its facets
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Yep, exactly.
With that said, let's take a look at Song of the South.
Yeah, the very first live-action Disney movie, or at least
It,
almost complete live-action Disney movie.
it was the first film to use mostly live action bits. The first full live action film wasn't until Treasure Island, but this really was the first attempt at using a lot of live action footage to cheapen the cost of actual production of the films. And upon viewing this film, many people have called it out and said this is racist. There's been a lot of controversy over whether or not this film is actively racist.
Yeah.
And many people have expressed their opinions on this matter, and like people like Nostalgia Chick in particular. But I feel a lot of them are really missing the point, or they're reading too much into the film.
Yeah, I feel the same way because, like, what the way that I was introduced to this film was actually through the song "Zip-a-dee-doo-dah," and
Oh, zippity-doo-dah.
yeah, so and aside from that song, I hadn't seen anything else of the film because it wasn't released at that time. But I always thought it was I always really liked it, and then I found it on YouTube later on, and I rewatched it. I'm thinking, oh, this is my childhood. This is so great. And then I looked down at the comments, and there are so many hate-filled comments, like either of people, saying how horribly racist this movie was, or bashing the people who say that it wasn't that racist.
And it's just like, okay, of of any film you could take and pick out to be that is racist, this doesn't really fit the bill in my opinion. I mean, people have singled out a lot of films for being racist, and some of them I scratch my head at. I saw comments about how people think Remember the Titans is a racist film.
How?
I because it makes the whites out to be evil, even though like one of the coaches is actually pretty cool with the black coach. It raises so many questions, and people do. I think the definition of racism has been so skewed over the years that people think that showcasing the history of what happened is considered racist. For example, going back to the Remember the Titans, it showcased a period of time where people were very prejudiced against black people.
Right.
Some people take that to be racist, and I'm just like, this is what happened back then. And that's kind of what happens with Song of the South. Song of the South is more historically accurate. Now, don't really quote me too much on this because I wasn't around back then. I don't know if they actually spoke the way they spoke in this film back then to a T, but I think it's more about, they show the historical accuracy, okay, what it was like to live on a plantation after the Civil War.
Right, because this took place during the Reconstruction era, so...
And not a lot of people know that. I mean, it is a pretty ambiguous time period in terms of how the film is set. It doesn't actually go in and say, okay, it doesn't give you the exact date or exact year of the film.
Right, but it is pretty clear, though, that it does take place after slavery was abolished because, you see, for instance, at one point in the film, the character Uncle Remus actually leaves the plantation. Now, had this been the time of slavery, he wouldn't have been allowed to go beyond the front gate.
And throughout the film, I keep seeing, there's actually a lot of respect towards the colored people in the film. If you look at the way that the grandmother talks to Uncle Remus throughout the film, she does so with respect. It's like you're mutually respectful individuals. They're just talking to each other. They're wizened in years. They've grown up. They've lived long enough to, for quite a long time. And so they respect each other. And this is something we're really going to get into in a little bit later. But first, we should really highlight what this film is all about.
Right.
Song of the South is another film that Disney did based on a book of children's stories. And for the majority of their 1940s films, it was based on children's stories. This one was actually written by a fictional colored person by the name of Uncle Remus, and it was passed down through the years, and it was basically children's fairy tales, the story of Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and Brer Fox.
Yeah, in modern day society, these would be equal to like Aesop's fables, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. And they're meant to teach a lesson, and they're meant to help kids out and become more moral, respectful people. And so Disney grew up with these stories. He grew up reading them, and he stated from the very beginning of before he had even produced anything that this was in his mind in terms of production for a very long time.
Exactly. Like he had a very strong fondness for this film, and he wanted to do it just right, even going so far as to actually put off creating it until technology had caught up enough to in order to allow him to do the story justice.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, in order to do what he wanted to do with it, he wanted to create a story and then showcase the animated segments. And it really took quite a few years until that technology was perfected. I think the best use of it beforehand was the Three Caballeros.
Right, because after the success of that, because as we talked about, the live action and cartoon interaction was brilliant. So
it was seamless. It was really well handled, and so when he saw what he could do with that, he was just like, okay, we have to greenlight this. I've always wanted to do this production. Let's do it. And so he took the Uncle Remus stories and he made kind of a plot to string it all together. And so the live action bits are the introduction of this fictional character of Uncle Remus, played by an amazing actor. This guy was nominated for an Oscar, was it?
An Academy Award.
An Academy Award for his performance. Yeah, for his performance in the film, and he deserves it because, first of all, he's amazing in this role.
No doubt.
He plays this wise old man who's lived on this plantation for pretty much all his life, and he tells all these old stories to the kids around who live on the plantation.
Right.
And one thing to really note is that he's telling these stories to everyone. He tells it to the protagonist of the film, who's the child of the plantation owner, and he doesn't really look at things with a color bias right from the very beginning. That's one thing to note is that, he's not just like, oh, I have to tell you stories because you're the plantation owner's son or something. No, he tells his stories to everyone.
Right. Yeah, he has no bias for anyone. You see him telling it to the plantation children. You see him telling it to the plantation owner's grandson. Yeah, pretty much anyone who's willing to listen. And he even said at one point that he would tell the boy's grandmother when she was a child his stories. And this was when slavery was legal, presumably. So that really says something.
I mean, back in these times, things probably would have been a little bit harsher than what they show in the film, which is a major credit to the film itself, where it doesn't go the route of like Gone with the Wind, where you don't see people abusing slaves, you don't see people slapping black people around or anything like that. There's a lot of mutual respect. There's a lot of how do you put this? Basically, they have an understanding between each other. They live on the plantation and they work on it, and it's pretty much how they make their livelihood. But there's not like people like whipping them or anything like that. And one criticism that was lobbied at the film was that all the people living on the plantation are superficially happy, like they're too happy. And I'm just like, well, this is their home. This is the only place they've pretty much known. They grew up here. Sometimes you gotta be happy. And it's a Disney film. Everyone is happy in Disney films.
Right. And I know it's a popular, a popular belief that, every single person who owned slaves were horrible people, that would beat their slaves and whip them if they didn't, like, work their ass off and everything.
And, fun fact, the Founding Fathers, some of them did own slaves. And these were good people. Not everyone who owned slaves are bad people. It's just something bad that happened at that point in time. People learned their lesson that all people were equal. And as time progressed, we slowly moved towards equality. And we still don't have it today, but we still strive for some semblance of equality. And not everyone was treating people like horribly, like they are in movies all the time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if anything, that unlike other movies and cartoons, this movie really doesn't show any horrible things, any violence of the sort, for the most part anyway. It's it's pretty much just showing, that it's pretty much the tale of a boy who goes to visit his grandmother, meets a worker on her plantation, and they become friends.
Yeah, this little kid, his father brings him over to the plantation because his mother, to make sure that his mother and his son are safe. There's something. It's not really stated that much, but basically it seems like he's made some enemies at his job back in the big city. And so he brings his son and his wife over to the plantation to, make sure they're safe and away from harm. And of course the kid, he feels abandoned by his father. And so he feels lonely, but he makes friends with a young black boy and Uncle Remus, the two of the people who live on the plantation. And that's one really big thing to note is that this kid is also pretty colorblind. He goes right up. He worships Uncle Remus because he tells these fantastic stories of the good days or the fictional times, And he right off the bat he befriends this young black child.
And not only that, he's also class blind as well, in the fact that he befriends a presumably, poor white girl, despite the fact that, she's associated with what is basically white trash.
And in fact, for the most part of the film, there really isn't a villain present. But if there were one, it would be the young girl's two brothers and the boy's mother as well. And to note, I mean, they're not really too vilified. They're mostly shown as jerks or, neglectful, bad parent figure. But it's the white people who are at fault in this film.
Right. So, because at no point do they make, at no point do they ever, vilify any of the black characters or, try to make them seem, dumb or completely subservient.
I mean, some people have taken issue with the language that the black people use in the film, but this is the 1940s, and the film is set. The film is set in the Civil War, so take it a 1940s mindset of what people would talk around the Civil War time, and it was more simplified speak, but black people did talk like that in the South quite a while ago.
Actually, Southern people in general. And one thing to note, actually, is that their dialect was actually a lot heavier, and it was actually written out in the books. And Disney actually decided to lighten the tone just so, the audience could understand what they were saying.
And, people just say, oh, they make these black people out to be so dumb the way they talk. You know what? People talked like this, and
I know
it's the same issue that people had with the crows in Dumbo. People did talk like that.
Right, and if anyone's ever been to the southern parts of the United States, you have come across some type of people that do talk like that.
Even white people used to talk like that, or they talk in the southern dialect. It's just an accent. It's just the way people, used language back then, or in those parts. And it's all about the geography of it and the education that they had. And in the South, not many people had that well of an education.
I mean, that's not true for all of them, but...
Not true of all of them, but you got to think of the difference between the North and the South at that time period. Especially right after the Civil War, the North was going through the Industrial Revolution, where we were getting all this technology and knowledge was, growing rapidly, but in the South they were resisting this technological change, so they did not have the same kind of education that the people in the North had.
Right, I will give it that.
Mm-hmm.
So, should we go over the list of characters then?
Yeah. Let's start with Uncle Remus himself. I like this guy. I like him a lot. A lot of people have claimed he's the mythical, what's the name for it?
The wise mystical Negro.
And
as Spike Lee would put it.
Well, basically, it's the black person who solves all the white person's problems and who is cool with everything. And I don't see it really. I mean, there's some of it in there, I guess. But for the most part, he's not really out for the benefit of any one person. Like I said, he tells his stories to everyone in the town, and the protagonist comes to him for advice. He's not, going out and, actively searching for someone to be wise and, wise to, or to give lessons to someone. The kid finds him. He tells a story to make him feel better. And he also does the same thing for the little white girl. He also does the same thing for his nephew, which is the black kid that the protagonist befriends. And so he's not really out for the benefit of one person. And for the most part, he's just trying to impart the wisdom that he's had over these years. He doesn't really have... He has an emotional impact and an intellectual impact on these people, but he doesn't have the same type of impact that, the stereotypical impact, like, help the white person escape from danger or escape from their problems. He's just imparting wisdom.
Right, but then again, that would technically fall into the stereotype people accuse him of, the Uncle Tom stereotype. Because basically his stereotype is the same as the Asian stereotype of, the wise old grandpa or uncle who knows kung fu.
But he's not he's not doing like hundreds of math problems, or he's not just knowing everything. Throughout the film, we see him more as a human figure, because there are several times where he looks at himself and he's just like, I'm just an old man who can't do nothing right. He looks down on himself, when he thinks he's doing something wrong. There are many moments in the film where he feels more like a human character than this mystical old wise man.
True. I'll agree with that. So, and as for like the performance, like we said earlier, James Baskett does a really good job portraying him. And Walt Disney actually stated that he was one of the best actors he ever worked with, because he needed little to no direction in terms of the character. Like, that was pretty much just his take on the character that he did himself.
And I mean, he can sing. He does a great job in all the songs of the film. He can act. He does emotions really well in the film, especially when he has to be in like this mystical, realm of the mixture of live action and animation, and he sees a cartoon bunny and cartoon birds like fluttering around him, and he has the perfect reaction to it.
Right. Definitely give him props for, working with green screen back when it was fresh and new. And I also have to point out a bit of sadness that happened after this film. Because, first of all, he wasn't allowed to go to the premiere of the movie because, unfortunately, they chose to show this in Georgia, and Georgia at the time had those stupid segregation laws.
Mm-hmm. And so that wasn't Disney's fault at all.
No, and actually, again, he wasn't allowed to come to the Academy Awards either, where he got an honorable award for his portrayal of the character, and Disney was actually willing to boycott unless they gave him the award. And then, just to top it all off, about, I think 2 years later, I think he ended up dying from respiratory failure.
And it's the kind of thing where I think a lot of people point at Disney and say, oh, this guy is really racist, or he's like this corporate presence, this corporate evil presence. And you got to think, Disney did not see color barriers when he was, working with this actor. He was just like, this is a great actor. He did great work, and he actually fought for him to get this Academy Award nomination.
Exactly, and actually, he handpicked James Baskett to be Uncle Remus, because originally the actor came in to audition for the voice of one of the butterflies. And after hearing his voice, Walt Disney wanted to meet him in person, and after having talked to him, hearing his range and seeing his ability, he hired him right on the spot as Uncle Remus, and also allowed him to be the voice of Brer Fox.
Yeah.
So you could tell he had enormous respect for him.
And so, say what you will about the character of Walt Disney, in a time where racial segregation and prejudice was prominent, he was not one of those people.
Right. And I know somebody out there is going to point out, oh yeah, he may not have hated the blacks, but he hated the Jews, blah, blah, blah. I personally don't think that's true. I mean, I haven't seen any solid proof to suggest it, but that's just my opinion.
People have put anti-Semitical thoughts into many political figures over the years. Not all of them have been right. And you know what? If you want to believe that, you can. I'm not stopping you, but I personally don't believe that about Walt Disney.
Right. And actually, here's something interesting I learned. Disney wanted to make sure that, that the script for the movie didn't portray any, Uncle Tom-esque material, like that people accuse this movie of having. So he actually fired his writer, who was actually a far-right conservative, and hired a liberal Jewish person to write the film.
So yeah, I think that speaks for itself right there. But moving away from the controversial matters, I think Uncle Remus is the highlight of this film. And because when you get down to it, 33% of this film is quite boring.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing that, kind of like ruins this film, is the fact that it is very slow paced in parts, and even though it's only, like, how long? Like
It's
94
about an
minutes.
hour and 20 minutes.
Right, it's an hour and 20 minutes long, but it feels like 2 hours. That's how long the scenes stretch out.
I mean, I think the highlights of this film are the animated segments, which, while they don't have the best animation in the Disney in Disney history, they are fun, they are enjoyable. All the characters in the animated segments are, they're a laugh. There's something that I could point to. I could have if I had a child, I would show these animated segments to them because they're fun and they're funny. And so those are enjoyable. The live action bits tend to stretch out quite a bit, but Uncle Remus kind of lays everything down. I can't praise this actor enough for making some like Pollyanna-esque, boring stuff enjoyable.
Definitely, because compared to Uncle Remus, the rest of the characters are just so blah.
And one note. So speaking of one note and bland, let's talk about the protagonist of the film.
Yes, the character's name is Johnny, and he is played by a young Bobby Driscoll, who a lot of you will know later to have played Jim Hawkins in Treasure Island and voiced Peter Pan.
So, I mean, he changed quite a bit after this.
Obviously.
But for his first performance, he's just kind of... You can tell he's reading his lines, like, on a prompter or off screen. And his reactions are kind of iffy at best. Like, when he's supposed to look sad, he gives this really weird face. Like, it's kind of in the middle of being sad and mad.
He looks like he's constipated.
Yeah.
Yeah, he in terms of facial expressions and all that, like, it's kind of over the top, and just how bad they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's supposed to be, upset, and again, like I said, he looks like he's constipated. He's supposed to be, intrigued, and he looks like he's confused. So.
Well, he looks like he's confused a lot of the time.
Yeah. He's trying to figure out, hey, where are those title cards at?
But, I mean, he's not... I wouldn't say he's horrible for the time, because I've seen worse child actors. I've seen annoying child actors. He's just kind of dull. He doesn't have this spark to him. Like, think of him as, if you've ever seen Miracle on 34th Street, the opposite of that little girl.
Yeah, I could see it.
She's like all peppy and cheery, and he's just kind of like, I'm gonna look down at my feet now. He doesn't have something enjoyable about him. He's not very interesting.
Yeah, plus he's like really whiny as well.
The only really interesting thing about his story is that, okay, he resents his father and he misses his father, and he looks up to Remus as a father figure.
Yeah, he's really bland, you know what I mean? There's really, like, he pretty much exists just to move the plot forward.
Mm.
Like, because, like, they could have...
He is a mini MacGuffin, if you think about it. He brings the segments along, and it's his minor problems that bring Uncle Remus back into the picture to tell his stories, which is kind of the subplot of the film. And the subplot is, like an episode of South Park, the subplot is more interesting than the main plot.
Right. That I'll definitely give it that because his whole daddy issues, they get old really quick, and his other issues with the what was it with the bullies?
The sadistic bullies.
Yeah. It's not that interesting to watch just because, the bullies are so generic and he's so generic and we've seen this many times before. Yeah, nothing interesting.
Even for the 40s, you gotta think like this has been done quite a bit. Maybe not in film because film was still relatively new, but it's the kind of thing that even in literature was not new at all.
Right. So let's move on because he's so boring. I ran out of things to talk about him.
Let's move on to the mother figure. His mother, who basically has little to nothing to do with the actual plot.
Yeah.
She exists to be a bad mother and to insist she knows what's best for her son, and yet doing the complete opposite of what she should do.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Like, I guess an excuse for her is the fact that the son mentions at one point that his father had never left him and his mother before. So I guess you could say that she was kind of upset and emotional from, having to raise him on her own. But that's still...
But that's no excuse. I mean, the grandmother lives on the plantation. She's very headstrong. She's a very strong feminine character in this film at a time where women were not very portrayed very strong. And yet his mother is like, what is going on with this person?
Yeah.
She's so codependent. She's like a leech to the grandmother.
Yeah.
And she relies on the grandmother for advice, and yet she doesn't take it.
Yeah, that doesn't... None of that... Her character really does not make sense. Because it's obvious that she can't really function without her husband, yet she refuses to go along with him back to Atlanta because she wants to, stay with Johnny and, keep an eye on him. But even then, she doesn't really do that.
You know what? Johnny would be better off just without her at the plantation. Like, the grandmother is a very respectful figure. She has a strong head on her. She has a strong head on her shoulders. She knows what she's doing, and Uncle Remus is a good father figure. The two of them work together really well, and yet the mother insists, no, I know what's best. I know what's best. He needs a party. He needs to talk to other little boys his age. He already has a friend, though. Uncle Remus is a friend, too. No, he needs a party.
Yeah, because it's obvious she doesn't know what her son needs. Because at first she insists that, all he needs is his mother and grandmother. But even his grandmother knows that that's bullcrap and he needs a lot more than that. And that if she's going to, take away his ability to, socialize with Uncle Remus and his two friends, then what has he got? He's basically isolated in a place that's not even his home.
And the thing is, like, okay, she lets him be with Uncle Remus for a little bit, but then she's like, I'm sick of him hearing this Uncle Remus stories. He needs to play with other boys his age, even though he kind of already is. But she's like, okay, I'm gonna throw a party for him. It's like a birthday party, I guess, and we're gonna invite all the little boys in the area. And she doesn't make sure that he goes to his own birthday party because he doesn't.
Right, and even then, she was reluctant to let him invite his other friend Ginny, and I guess again it's more because the fact that she's from a poor white family, that than anything, and probably because of who her brothers are. So.
Well, I don't. She doesn't really care that her brothers are sadistic.
Right, but it's established that none of the parents will let their kids play with those two because of how nasty they are. So I guess the stigma goes with their sister as well, just because, she's associated with them. And in fact, when Johnny asks, can he invite Ginny, his mother starts off by saying, well, there's going to be so many children, and then his grandmother interrupts and is like, well, one more won't matter then.
Yeah, like I said, the grandmother is so much wiser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the mother, but the good thing about the mother is that she at least learns her lesson by the end of the film. Because she realizes that by, basically taking away everything that makes her son happy, it ultimately leads to him not only becoming upset, but becoming hurt as well. She realizes that, she should just do what it takes to make him happy.
And she's pushing her own son away. I mean, she keeps saying, "Oh, Uncle Remus, I don't want you telling any more of that stories to the child," even though they're more lessons designed to help the development of children. And then she's like, "I don't want you seeing this boy no more." And it's like, he's not even actively seeking out the boy. Johnny is coming to see him. And Johnny respects and admires this person. So Uncle Remus has done nothing wrong, and you're vilifying him and saying, "Oh, you don't be telling no more stories now."
Yeah, I find it. I can't help but get the idea that had she been allowed to have her way and control who Johnny hung out with and how he grew up, he'd probably be the next Norman Bates.
But I mean, going back to the controversy, she could have done so much more with a person in her position. Like, think about it. She's basically the owner of this plantation. She could have Uncle Remus fired, hung, whatever. Back in those days, things happened like that. But no, she's just like, I just don't want you talking to him anymore. And she did it nicely the first time, and then she kind of raised her voice a little bit, but she didn't do anything drastic.
Right, and it's not like she forcibly, separated them. She just voiced her displeasure.
And in fact, really, the grandmother disagreed with her quite a lot. The grandmother who is in charge of the plantation for real, she's just like, you know what, I don't care what my daughter says. Uncle Remus, you're cool with me. Mm-hmm. That's the paraphrasing of it. As we've said before, the grandmother is the cool person on the plantation.
Right. Because she grew up listening to Uncle Remus's stories. She knows that they're, harmless stories that entertain kids and help them learn lessons. And she fully supports Johnny and Remus's, relationship. So she's definitely, one of the better characters, even if she's not featured as much.
But then again, that actually makes her more enjoyable. Like, I find the mother is too much in the limelight, and she's in the picture too much. Mm-hmm. The grandmother figure has somewhat a mysterious air about her because, a lot of the time she's not there, and when she is on screen, she has some really memorable moments, and that makes her much more enjoyable. Then again, the other end of the spectrum is Johnny's dad, who only appears at the very beginning and the end of the film, and I can't remember much about him.
Yeah, pretty much he's there to be the daddy issue for Johnny and, the drive that, causes him to be pushed toward Uncle Remus and, basically see him more as a father figure than his own father. Because I wouldn't say that he's a bad father, because, he's just looking out for his family, because, he's basically a journalist that people have a grudge against. And considering how journalists are treated nowadays, that was probably a smart move on his part. But I don't really think, there's anything bad or good about him, because, he doesn't even bother to make it out for his son's birthday either. And again, he doesn't show up until the kid gets hurt, and by then the kid's like, "Oh, I found a new daddy now. I don't need you anymore."
Yeah, he instead of calling out his father's name, he was calling out Uncle Remus's name, and so I think that was one of the poignant scenes of the film where he's just like, okay, his father finally comes home, but he's not wanted. He's been gone too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's implied at the end that he does quit his job, and then he moves back in with them, and they pretty much live on the plantation from then on in. But even then, I don't think that'll be enough to really like fix the relationship. I
I
mean,
mean,
you can say it did just to give it the whole Disney happy ending type thing, but I really don't think it would have made a difference.
there really isn't. It's a very ambiguous ending. It's one of the only Disney films that has that kind of ending where you don't know if it's happy or not. I mean, there's a lot of happy conclusions. Uncle Remus is staying. He's allowed to tell his stories, and the kids are walking while zip-a-dee-doo-dah is playing, and all the animation starts happening. But the main problems, the main issues of the father and stuff haven't been resolved. And in fact, the two bullies, the issue with the two bullies hadn't been resolved at all.
Yeah, I guess we should talk about them next.
Yeah, there's really not too much to say about them. They're Ginny's brothers. They're sadistic. They try to drown a puppy just because.
Yeah, they're basically two white trash boys who are, the worst form of young boys you can think of. That they roughhouse, they're violent, they pick on kids who are smaller than them, they hurt animals.
Think in Pinocchio, that Isle of Unruly Boys, they would be the first people there, and they would turn into donkeys first.
Absolutely. And from what I've read, they're actually supposed to be a live action juxtaposed to the two cartoon villains, which are Brer Fox and Brer Bear. And you can kind of see it because one is kind of, fast talking and
the other
cunning,
one's
while the other
slow.
one's slow and dumb.
And I think it's funny that they have that juxtaposed. I mean, both versions, like both the Brer Fox and Brer Bear characters and the two boys, do have funny scenes. And I think when they're on screen and they're trying to harm Johnny, is actually it makes the film a little bit more enjoyable because they try to be witty and cunning and they fail completely.
Right. And there's also the whole subplot where their sister Ginny, who is Johnny's friend, she gives him her puppy, because she knows that her brothers are rough and that they're gonna hurt it and drown it, because drowning puppies was acceptable back in the day. And their whole drive for this movie is to get back that puppy so they can drown it. And my question the whole time, because Johnny tries to keep the puppy, but his mother won't let him, and then he gives it to Uncle Remus, who hides it until he realizes that, he wasn't supposed to have the puppy in the first place. And the bullies are going, behind his back, telling his mother and all them that the puppy is theirs and everything. Here's my question. Why don't the kids ever tell the adults that, hey, these kids want to drown the dog? Are you really going to let that happen?
Because PETA hadn't been invented yet.
Apparently.
Well, it's a different time back then.
Yeah,
and you gotta expect, like, these kids tell tall tales all the time. I don't know if the adults will necessarily believe the word of a young boy.
Yeah, but even then, their mother had stated that, yes, that puppy belonged to Ginny and she can do whatever she wants with it. And, she even punishes the boys when she finds out that they've been trying to get the dog back. So they could have easily just had Ginny's mom go talk to Johnny's mom and, set the record straight. But no.
But then we'd actually see their mothers for more than 5 seconds. Because we don't see the parents that much in the film, other than Johnny's mom and grandmother. But really, the parental figures are not there that much.
True. Yeah, I mean, like I said, and the ones we do see, his mother is pretty much the sub-villain, and his grandmother and the Ginny's mother are not around that much. Neither is the father.
They're enjoyable, but they're not around that much, and the father is just, a neglectful jerk.
Mm-hmm. And even then, with Uncle Remus, like, he does it. he does, dislike the boys. It's pretty clear, and he does scold them whenever they try to pick on Johnny and Ginny. But even then, when he does try to, scold them, you could tell it's just a lot of hot air because there's really nothing he can do about it. And even they know that.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much all the live action characters.
Well,
and then you have the animated bits.
Well, actually, there is other characters we did forgot to mention.
Who?
Well, we forgot to talk about Toby. His
Oh yeah, the third child. There really isn't too much to say about him.
Right.
He's the nephew of Uncle Remus, and he's a little kid. He enjoys, he's happy. He goes around and has fun, and he befriends Johnny. And the only thing that he really does to the film is, he introduces Johnny to the plantation. They play together for a bit, and then when Johnny hides from his mother, he goes and tries to find Johnny. He's really more of a MacGuffin character than Johnny himself.
True, but he does provide a bit of comic relief.
That is true.
Yeah, like he sneaks a frog in, and then he has trouble holding on to it, or he says.
Well, he holds it in completely wrong way. He puts it on his head. He takes his hand off the frog to put his hat on his head. Twice this happens, and the frog hops off his head. You'd think you'd learn after the first time.
Right. But, I mean, it's still fun to watch, and he says adorable lines like, "Uncle Remus, you tell the best stories in the entire United States of Georgia."
Mm-hmm. And people might find that racist, but I believe people did talk like that back then.
I think it's cute, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something that a kid would say, a kid who never really, left his home. So, and speaking of cute, we also got Ginny, who we did mention before.
Yeah.
And this girl, she is oozing with cute.
She is very enjoyable. She's cute. She's plucky. She stands up to her brothers for the most part. In fact, she wears the pants in her relationship with Johnny.
Yeah, she does. But she also tries to be ladylike, too, with wearing dresses and, bowing and saying, "Pleased to meet ya." And she just has the cutest voice. She has, that really cute baby girly voice. And I know that a lot of people would find that type of voice, really annoying or even offensive because, some girls do that to make themselves sound dumber, which they think is more attractive. But I actually think it's really cute.
Yeah, I think it's cute too. She isn't dumb by any stretch of the imagination. She's one of the. I find there's actually, other than the mother, all the women in this film are strong characters.
Oh, definitely, no doubt. And even the women that aren't really showcased doing anything still have a commanding presence. Like another character that we should mention is Aunt Tempe, which I believe is supposed to be Johnny's family's servant, I believe. And she's played by the Academy Award-winning Hattie McDaniel, who a lot of you might remember as being a maid in Song of the South. I mean, not Song of the South, I'm sorry. Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, she won Academy Award for Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, and while she doesn't really do anything other than be, the commanding presence that Johnny has to listen to, she still does get her time. She does sing a little song, and she does make her presence known.
And she does have some really good scenes with Uncle Remus, where they're just talking about, the situations that happen. And, she is an enjoyable character, but she doesn't have much presence in this film, aside from a few scenes.
True. I mean, she's basically there to be another authority figure for the kids, but, you can still tell that she's there.
I mean, for the most part, this film centers around Uncle Remus and the three children. Everything else is kind of secondary characters and tertiary characters.
True, yeah, and like we said, because this film is pretty much boring. A lot of the characters are boring as well. So if it seems like we glanced over some characters or, didn't talk about others quite as much, it's, again, just the characters themselves are uninteresting and not really worth paying attention to.
I think a third of this film could be shaved off, and we wouldn't really lose much. But I mean, like I said, Uncle Remus is the highlight of the film, and then we get to the animated segments, which are, the stories he's telling, and they're really enjoyable. We have Brer Fox, who is this, really fast-talking fox figure out to catch the rabbit, and he has these schemes of how to catch the rabbit, and it's like a Bugs Bunny cartoon where you have like this guy constantly scheming to catch this rabbit and failing. And then you have Bear, who, gets tricked by the rabbit, and so he just wants to, get revenge on the rabbit, but he's slow, and so he works for the fox. And, they make quite an interesting pair, because the bear, kind of listens to whatever the fox says, because he talks so fast that the bear can't process it all.
Yeah, they're the comical duo, their couple is actually kind of like typical now. In a lot of you see them a lot in Looney Tune cartoons. Those type of characters. The fast talking smart character, and then the big dumb one. I mean,
it's like in Home Alone with the two villains there.
Yeah, but there is a difference though. Is that it actually does take a lot to trick them, and it's not necessarily because they're really smart and they catch on to Brer Rabbit's tricks real quick. It's also because that just the way their minds work, particularly Brer Bear, it's that they don't, they don't completely fall for it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, Brer Rabbit gets snagged in a rabbit trap, and after unable to escape, he sees Brer Bear and thinking, hey, I could switch places with this guy and get away. And he lies to him and says that, this is my job. I'm scaring the crows, and I'm making $1 a minute. And the guy's like, $1 a minute, I want to make that. And he's like, okay, why don't we switch places? And the guy's like, no, I don't want to take your job away from you.
There are some really comical sequences, and, all three of them really have great comedic timing. And, there are a lot of moral lessons that shine through in each tale. Like, in the first one, it's about, okay, you want to leave your home. If the people that, kids that run away from home to leave their problems, you're only going to find more problems outside. You can't run away from your problems. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one later on where it's basically, you can't be sad all the time because everyone has this, they refer to it as a laughing place, which is basically like, everyone has the ability to be happy or to laugh. You just gotta find the right. You just gotta find the right happy place. You gotta find the right thing to make yourself happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are 3 cartoons throughout the course of the film, and they take up about 15 to 20 minutes with each one. And so I find them really enjoyable. What do you think?
I like them too. Cause I always enjoy the big cartoon segments. In my opinion, it is the highlights of the movie, aside from Uncle Remus. Because really, when you're a kid and you're watching a movie like this, you want to see the cartoons.
And the fact that the live action people are interacting with the cartoons is pretty awesome. And when you're a kid and you're looking at that and it's like, oh my God, Uncle Remus is just talking to these birds. I'm going to go talk to these birds.
But yeah, the cartoons themselves are a lot of fun. They're sort of Looney Tune-esque, though probably a little less violent.
And a lot less pop culture-y.
Right.
And but they're there to tell a moral lesson. They make you laugh. And, for the most part, they're really enjoyable. Another bit of controversy in the cartoon bits was they had this, Brer Fox hatches up a plan to make what he calls a tar baby, which is basically, dressing up tar to look like something sitting on a log. And, a lot of people thought that, tar baby was a racial slur or something like that, especially because the figure just looks like a black child. But it actually refers to something different.
Right. The tar baby is actually a reference to a sticky situation, one that gets stickier the deeper you get into it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it means. Like, other people have kind of misconstrued it over the years, saying that it's supposed to be, like a racist figure of like some young black child, but honestly, that isn't it at all, and that wasn't the intention. Like, it's basically a trap just to capture Brer Rabbit.
And it was in the actual Uncle Remus storybooks too.
Mm-hmm.
This was taken directly from the storybook, so it's a black person who's writing this. I don't think it's going to be racist in that regard.
Yeah, and on top of that, they couldn't exactly call it the glue baby, because I really don't think white glue was quite made at that point. At least wasn't as sticky as tar is, and tar, as we all know, is black. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't think they would melt down white chocolate and call it a white chocolate baby.
So overall, the cartoons are really fun. What do you think of the music of the film?
Well, as I stated, I absolutely love the song "Zip-a-dee-doo-dah." Everyone knows that is the best song in the whole movie.
And that's really what a lot of people remember from this film. It's Zip-a-dee-doo-dah. And even if you've never seen this film, you've heard Zip-a-dee-doo-dah. It's been, in music videos. It's been shown countless times in different places. If you've been on Splash Mountain, you heard it there. It's one of those songs that really sticks. And, I don't have to tell you how good it is. It's just a really enjoyable song. But there are two other songs in the film that actually have lyrics that you might not remember. There were actually 9 songs made for this film, but most of it is really background music, I would say, or just kind of, hymns sung by the workers on the plantation. But the other two to note are, I forget the name. It's
How Do You Do?
How Do You Do? Yeah. The second song, the second major song of the film is How Do You Do? And it's upbeat and cheery, but I can see why it's not really remembered because it has little to no lyrics. And it's basically, just say, how are you, everybody? It has a good beat and it's nice and upbeat, but it doesn't have this memorable quality to it.
Right. Plus, it has like some southern lingo that not a lot of people really understand.
Mm-hmm.
Like
but it does have the frog in it, and this frog is awesome. He smokes a pipe with Uncle Remus, and he has a cool voice.
Oh, he has like the deepest voice of any cartoon character I ever heard. He's like down there. Like, this frog has like major testicles. That's how deep his voice is.
So yeah, that song is enjoyable, but it doesn't have the staying power. Now, the other major song of the film, I'm actually surprised that not many people remember it. It's Everybody Has a Laughing Place, and it's actually portrayed in the Splash Mountain ride itself, if you've been through it. And it's like, everybody has a laughing place, ha 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 ha. And it's enjoyable, it's fun, and it's just like, it's meant to make children smile. And yes, it's not as lyrically efficient. It's not as good lyrically as Zip-a-dee-doo-dah, but it's simple. It's supposed to be a simple, fun little song. And I'm really surprised that not a lot of people have taken to it as they have Zip-a-dee-doo-dah.
I guess because a lot of people haven't really seen the cartoons since they don't show Song of the South as much at all anymore. Those cartoons kind of disappeared with it.
It wasn't released in video in the United States, and that was a huge detriment. You can find it, VHS in other countries, but for the most part, you can't find it in America. And another reason, I guess, why the only song that people remember from this film is Zip-a-dee-doo-dah is because that's the only really big song that was sung by Uncle Remus. How Do You Do was sung by Brer Rabbit. And Everybody Has a Laughing Place was kind of all the animated characters together.
Hmm. Yeah, but I guess it's just mainly lack of exposure. I think it had the cartoons been, taken by themselves, maybe mixed with other cartoons and shown a lot more, maybe the songs could have become more popular. But again, just lack of exposure. So they're
But
not bad songs. I enjoy them. I think they're really catchy. It's just
mhm.
they unfortunately passed with time. But
Yeah,
it's a shame.
but like I said, Laughing Place, very underrated. Zip-a-dee-doo-dah is amazing, and How Do You Do is fun, but I wouldn't put it on the top underrated Disney songs, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and then the other songs, I don't remember anything about them, to be honest.
They're really just hymns and stuff sung in the background to set the mood.
Yeah,
If they weren't any lyrics to them, and or if there were lyrics to them, they weren't, and there weren't many, you know.
yeah. The title song, "Song of the South," you know, really, it's just there just to say the title. That's it.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean, in be the end of the film. I mean, the film ends on Zippity-Doo-Dah, a refrain of that sung by the children, if you can count that another song. But really, it's best when Uncle Remus sings it.
right, yeah. And then the other songs like that the workers sing, I remember nothing. That other song that Uncle Remus sings, "Who Wants to Live Like That," I don't remember it. So really, you have two good songs, one okay songs, and then like 6 or 7 forgettable ones.
And I don't think the other songs are really meant to have, much more staying power than that. Zippity Doo Dah was the central motif of the film. And it's really what the message of the film is based on. It's like, go outside and just enjoy life. Just look at things around you. Things aren't as bad as they seem. And that was one of the major messages of this film. It's like, you may be through hard times. A lot of people are going through hard times in this film, but just you can make the best of it. And I think that's one of the big major messages of this film.
Hmm. Yeah, Zippity Doo Dah is a fun song. It's very cheerful, very optimistic, and it definitely has earned its place in like the top rated Disney songs.
Yeah. So I mean, if nothing else from Song of the South, Zippity Doo Dah is one of the biggest accomplishments of this film. I mean, other than the amazing way they intercut live action and animation, it's even better done than in the Three Caballeros, where it was a film that was mostly animated brought to live action. This is mostly live action brought to the animated space. And they didn't have like the stage sets, kind of like it was almost like a theater sets that they had in Three Caballeros. Here they were down on the plantation. I don't think it was on the plantation itself, but they were on a stage version of a plantation. It was actually like woods around there, and so it was much more impressive visually in terms of how they used the animation. Was the animation as good in terms of visual quality as their other works, like Bambi and Snow White? No. I mean, this was a time where they had to cut costs, but they were still pioneering new animation techniques. And the major breakout of this film is the fact that they were able to reverse the success of Three Caballeros. And so, I mean, overall, not a lot of people know this film. Not a lot of people like this film. But I can personally say, in my opinion, again, opinion, I don't think it deserves the flack that it gets. I mean, there are some minor things that may be stereotypical here and there, but for the most part, I don't see the racism in the film. I don't see a lot of the problems with the film. The only thing that really problem it has is that the live action bits are really boring sometimes, and it has bad pacing. But the songs really work. The characters are, well, they went from bland to really good, but Uncle Remus really makes the film great, and the animated segments are fun.
Mm-hmm. I think a big problem with how it was received when it first came out was, I guess you could say, the false advertising. Because the way that I saw the trailer back then for when the movie was re-released, and the only bits that they showed was of the cartoons. I don't think they showed any of the live action stuff. So you would have adults bringing their kids to see what they thought was, a movie about a bunch of cartoons and about a rabbit, and they see this boring film about, a family and plantation workers. And they're thinking, oh crap, my kid's not going to sit through this. And then,
yeah, I can totally see that. But then Disney has had false advertising for a couple things. For example, Cough, the Reluctant Dragon, Cough.
True that. And also Bambi, and advertising it as a love story.
What the hell is up with that?
Yeah, so this is nothing new, but I think in this case it really did hurt the film in terms of, marketing it toward kids. Because seriously, if I was a kid, like as young as some of the other ones were when they saw this, presumably around the time when I first discovered this myself, I definitely would not be able to sit through this film. I would keep saying, "When did the cartoon rabbit showing up?" So definitely, the advertising hurt it, and not only that, but from what I've seen of the release poster, get this: the only characters they show are the white characters.
Really?
Uncle Remus isn't even on the poster. So you probably had really racist people coming to see this movie, and then realizing it was about a black man and his his relationship with these white children, and they probably flipped their shit.
Yeah, so it was probably a case of the whites at the time really thinking the movie was racist or using reverse racism,
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I don't see the racism in this film. I mean, feel free to try to correct me if you feel otherwise, but again, this is all opinion.
I think there's some political incorrectness, in terms of showing the happy workers on the plantation and the Uncle Tom-esque figure in Uncle Remus and perhaps the Tar Baby, but I really think a lot of that is relatively tame compared to much worse stereotypes like in Gone with the Wind or the old Looney Tune cartoons.
The old cartoons
or Amos
and stuff like that.
Yeah, or Amos and Andy, those type of things which are extremely uncomfortably racist. Like this one, let's put it this way. If you close your eyes and just, listen to this film, you really can't tell which characters are supposed to be white and which are supposed to be black. Because it's not like they make a point of, pointing it out, even to themselves or to the audience. Everyone kind of sounds alike. And, it really doesn't make a difference, what their skin color was. So this is a very colorblind film, in my opinion. It's just, just the fact that certain actors are played by certain races that has people up in arms.
Yeah, I would recommend seeing this film. It is boring at parts, but if you're like a Disney buff, or if you want to see the origins of zip-a-dee-doo-dah and stuff like that, watch this film. You want to yourself to at least give it a look, because it's considered one of the most controversial Disney films ever made, and you owe it to yourself to see why.
Yeah, because in my opinion, you should not go with the general consensus, of people saying that this movie is racist just because it features these type of people in these types of situations and stuff like that. Like, really watch it for yourself and then judge it before you say any shit about that. Because I've seen so many ignorant comments on YouTube. It is very, very discouraging.
Well, YouTube is the hive of scum and villainy.
True that. So yeah, I would definitely say give this a look. It is boring. It does drag, but the parts with the animation, the cartoons, and the interaction and everything is definitely worth a look.
And Uncle Remus is just amazing.
And personally, I am in support of having this film be re-released by Disney, possibly with a narrator at the beginning, stating, okay, this is how things were back then, this was the attitude of people, so some mannerisms may seem strange or offensive, but, this is how it was at the time. And, kind of explain it, as an educational piece for, kids in a newer generation, so that way they understand. And it really... I mean,
we had a Disney film about the history of aviation, and why not do this?
Yeah.
This is actually much more historically relevant. Airplanes!
Yeah, so I definitely say, show your kids this, because... Like, they probably would like it, if you fast forward through a few of the boring parts.
Yeah,
and just, explain it to them simply. Cause for
just tell them that this is the film that made Splash Mountain awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, Song of the South, boring, but definitely worth a look.
I would recommend seeing the boring parts, but recommend. It is not as bad as The Reluctant Dragon. It's not even as bad as, Saludos Amigos was. It's really, for the most part, I found it really enjoyable. But find out for yourself. Next time we delve into another segment of Disney weirdness in the 1940s. We have a double feature planned. It's going to be Fun and Fancy Free and Melody Time. And I'm not expecting much after, what we saw with Make Mine Music. But, I've been surprised before. Reluctant Dragon surprised me in a bad way. But, I have been surprised before. So we will see what happens.
Right. I mean, I already know some of the cartoons from some of these, and I can definitely say you're in for a mixed bundle. I guess I'll put it that way.
I will put my nostalgia goggles on, and we will see. But anyway, that will happen next time. This has been the Disney debate for this week. If you guys have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, or suggestions for Disney movies that we have not yet reviewed on the show, let us know at zenithrule.blip.tv in the comments thread, or you can follow us at twitter.com/zenithrule and twitter.com/EphraimTRabbit, or you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/zenithrule and facebook.com/catmac. And we are still taking that poll for all you guys out there for when we finish the 1940s, and, we want to see what's your favorite and least favorite films. So, we're going to set up a poll in the Disney Debate Facebook group, and just, let us know. But until then, I am Zenith Rule.
And I am Kat Mac /EphraimTRabbit/CatGCritic.
And we will see you guys next time.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for watching The Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on The Media Meltdown.